Hi, and welcome to InfoSec Alloy. I searched through r/cybersecurity Reddit to see if there's any interesting questions, and I want to share my experience, and hopefully you will gain something out of it. So, let's go! So, I found 3 questions that I thought would be very interesting to share because I think a lot of you might go through this or you might be thinking about it, and I want to share what I've gone through in my experience in cybersecurity, and hopefully it'll be good for you. So let's start. So r/no situation 1622 shared in CIA Triad. My mind's going in circles. So he shared, so my organization want CIA to be documented for all IT assets such as cloud services, software, hardware, etc. This will involve the different teams reviewing all the assets, putting a CIA rating. Mind you, they already have determined their assets are critical and the availability priority. We then have another team already working out of CIA for their critical backup services. I personally feel having CIA for all assets type isn't relevant. Our InfoSec team also don't work out a CIA rating when new services are introduced. So I feel my options are, number 1, to push back and say that we don't need CIA for all assets, and CIA can be used for assets where backup is required, or 2, ask the InfoSec team to start working out the CIA for each service that is introduced, and they can review existing services and determine a CIA. What's your thoughts? And in context, no situation 1622 is a junior in all of this. So I think one thing I've known when working in a cybersecurity role for quite a while is the importance for CIA. I know it's like the 101 thing that you learn in cybersecurity, and whenever we're talking about information security, this constantly comes out on their basics. But when it comes to rating all your assets, it is almost essential to be doing it for everything you have in your organizations. I think one of the bigger aspects, especially for the bigger organizations, is the idea of auditings, and especially if your organization is striving for an ISO 27K. So basically, it's a standardization to certify your company that you have meet industry standards when it comes to protecting your information, right? Setting the securities needed for it. And I think one of the biggest part is to be able to, number 1, know all of your assets. Number 2, know each risk that the services and your assets, to know the risk that they are exposed to. 3 is that in these auditings, right, knowing these ratings allow you to assess remediation actions, playbook actions of what to do with them and what to prioritize in the event of something happening. I think maybe this user or this person's issue is that it seems very tedious and unnecessary because it feels as if it's not that important. But I think the idea is that as a cybersecurity role analyst, right, to be able to have a definitive stats on each of your available systems is not only just important, it's actually essential for anything you need. Example, if there's an event of a incident, right, knowing all these factors, what has been compromised, confidentiality, its integrity, its availability, what are the factors that are most at risk, it allows you to determine your action plan towards these. And I think I would recommend not to push back on this, even though it may feel very, very tedious, but having a visible list of all your assets is essential, and to have a CIA rating stats for each of them is basically got more visibility for all within your organization. So my recommendation to no situation is go ahead and do it. You need to do it, and I think it's almost essential. And I think after reading some of the comments as well, a lot of them mentioned about the same things as I did, which is when it comes to auditing, it's essential. When it comes to ISO 27K, that's going to be essential. And just overall, the long run is having this asset list that you have with the proper rating allows you to determine in the future proper actions needed. So hope that helps. Next one. This is by r/Easter Iron Login. And so he says, it's a question that has been bothering me for a while. Other than labeling my alerts, how do I employ MITRE attack frameworks in a useful operational manner? I feel like I'm missing something. When I see an alert pop in my monitors, while it's interesting to see, example associated with brute force label, it's not telling me anything I can't already see, or providing an action plan or decision point. I feel like it's looking at a bullet hole and labeling that as it is indeed a bullet hole. Great, thanks. Snark aside, is the issue that it is more useful in larger, more decentralized SecOps environment where seeing a certain label might cause an action to be thrown in a different area of responsibility. While I get it may suggest looking out for related attack techniques when an alert is received, it feels like a reference framework for the sake of having a reference framework. A nice tech poster to hang on your wall, but not essentially useful otherwise. How are you all using it in your organization? Okay, so this I felt quite strongly about it because I created a video about it. The other thing is that I too, in the beginning of my early years as a forensics analysis, as an IR person, incident response personnel, I felt that the whole MITRE attack was quite redundant and pointless, right? Like this person, this OP says what's the point? It's just telling me the thing that I already know what it is. But actually, contrary to what he's saying, if you take the time to go into the frameworks website and actually drill down on the actual incident, that label that it is, you'll find that it does provide you many recommendational steps needed that will help you to determine your action plan down the line and remediation actions that you need. But I think one of the bigger insights that this MITRE framework is allowing you to have is allowing you to see within the whole kill chain where you are at. Example for this is this, right? He gave the example where he's a brute force, right? There's a brute force incident. In a brute force incident, right, it could be at an enumerated stage, right? But let's say that you found an incident which is further down in the kill chain. And if you look at the MITRE framework, you will see this matrix when the columns are actually labeled in the kill chain. Let's say you are in the middle of the kill chain. You found that there was an exploitation that happened within one device, one endpoint, correct? Here's the most important part. Immediately you know, right, that there is a beginning to attack and there's an end to attack. There is a objective that is supposed to be met. And MITRE framework allows you to understand where you are in that chain and what you should be looking out for. Because let's example say, right, that you found a exploit running. So that is within the exploitational column. Straight away, you know there's a whole stage of kill chain in the beginning that led up to this exploitation. And immediately from the framework, you are able to see what are the possibilities that led up to that exploitation, right? And so when it comes to your investigation, it will give you a guide on what you could be looking out for that that events that happened before that led up to the exploitation. So immediately you're going to help you find root causes of that issue. The other good thing is on the other end of the kill chain. Straight away, when you see an exploitation like that, you can then anticipate what are the possible outcomes the attacker is trying to do through that exploit, right? So immediately you look at your kill chain, your exploitation, you will have your weaponization, you have your exfiltration, you have your all that, the rest of that, right? And immediately you know that, okay, I'm in the middle of this kill chain. There's going to be things along the line of stages that the attacker is trying to get up to, right? And if I'm able to stop any of the future stages from happening, I at least will have a certain level of confidence that I have stopped the attacker in their track. So don't discredit MITRE attacks just yet. It is essential and it's quite a good reference. I think to also importantly note that this MITRE framework allows you to, it's a collection of open source collection of the most common techniques and tactics that are being that are in the wild right now, and that is really quite a valuable resource to be referencing to. So I hope that answers your question and I hope you use it. Next is a question submitted by r/generic Indian guy. That's a fantastic username. And he says, what's the best way to build logic and critical thinking? So before I share what OP is saying, I think just remember that this is under the cybersecurity subreddit. So OP is saying, almost everywhere I have read that individuals need to have a strong logic skills and strong critical thinking analysis skills, in addition to having great verbal written communication skills. I've always wondered about this. How do you define scope, problem-solving skills, or critical thinking skills? How do you build and improve these non-gimmickly? I have seen a lot of puzzles, but based on researchers I've come across, all they do is make you better at that type of puzzle. So in the end, being a memory pattern recognition exercise and not really a logic building exercise. The other variety I've seen is breaking the problem into small, simpler problems. Once you break into smaller chunks, there will be someone out there who will solve that problem. Sometimes exactly the problem, or sometimes a similar one whose solution can be adapted in your ways. So my question to all the professionals out there, how do you improve your critical thinking skills? Do things like debate, discussion, improve reasoning? Do philosophical dilemmas, paradoxes improve these skills in a way that can be applied in daily life for both work and other aspects? So this question may sound a bit generic, but let's put it in the context of cybersecurity. So I'm assuming that you are requiring these skills for investigations, to do forensics, or just being able to work out things in your cybersecurity role. I think for me, this is also quite a reflection point for myself. I think for quite a while, I've been always thinking like, how can I improve the way I think, the way I view certain cases whenever I receive an incident? Like, how am I able to adapt to the situation, to the new case, the new threats, to a new attack, right? And I always think like, everyone just keeps on saying like, oh, build critical skills, build your logic building on how to handle these kind of cases. I think one of the things that really helped me along this way is to gain practice in the types of logics that you need to work on. So in cybersecurity context, correct, like this OP said, it doesn't really help if you do logic puzzles, right? Because you only need help in that particular kind of puzzles. So what you really need to do is work on the puzzles that matter to you, which is cybersecurity cases, right? And This is an exercise that I usually do every day in the morning before I start my work, which is to go through Bleeping Computer. So in Bleeping Computer, you will see a lot of different articles and cases, correct? So one thing that I would like to do is that when you read articles of certain technical attacks, correct, or certain cases, when you read through the article, do it slowly, and before you reach the end, like whenever you receive an incident sentence, like what I mean is like, oh, say that XYZ is compromised this way. Immediately, I will do a simulation exercise in my brain and start thinking about what are the possible reasons why this company fell for it, what are the areas that caused this critical failure, and what caused to this compromise. And the idea with all this logic building is to first expand out your mind, to expand possibilities, and then bring in logic into these possibilities so that you'll be able to build up your logic. So that's how you go. It's like you first need to be able to understand what are the options in front of you, what are the possibilities that are in front of you. Then you're able to shrink it down to, from all those options, what are the best moves to move. So think about it like chess, right? Chess, the first thing that you need to do is to determine what are all the possible moves that are available to you. And in terms of cybersecurity, that would be in what are all the possible attack vectors that are possible within your organization, right? After that, of all the possibilities, correct, not all moves are made equal, right? So maybe social engineering is better, or maybe sending a malicious malware through email is another one. And you start to build up that logic of possibilities and the best way of moving it. And from there, you're able to build that logic on itself. And in cybersecurity perspective, that will help you gain a more rational ability to solve problems when it comes to threats and information security threats and vectors. The other thing is that you realize that when you do it long enough and more of these kind of things, you tend to form a framework for yourself, and you will start to realize the patterns of how most puzzles seem to be quite similar. And in terms of cybersecurity, you start to realize, oh, what are the more common security cases, and you start to realize, oh, most of the time it's because of a user who is not vigilant enough, and so that's the vector that goes in, and you can build your logic blocks around there. Yeah, and so this also leads on to the previous question that we're going through, the MITRE framework. So the thing is that with all this framework that has been formed, the fantastic thing is that someone kind of already created that framework for you. So you don't need to essentially reinvent the wheel, right? You can reference all these open source materials of how people already solved that problem, solved that logical issue, that incident, right? And reference from those that help you expand your options, expand what you can do, right? So just remember, one part of critical thinking is to expand your options and know what to look out for. In that could even mean knowing to look out for answers that people have already solved the problem for. The other thing that really helped me is playing chess. So that's one thing that really helps, right? Playing chess allows you to force you to think moves ahead and forces you to ask questions on itself. So when it comes to cybersecurity, that's the same thing as well, right? In cybersecurity, when you get an incident, you have to think a few steps ahead, right? When let's say a ransomware kicks in. So immediately once you think of ransomware, you start to think logically, what are the possibilities of a ransomware happening. So immediately, if you read up about it, your logic will tell you ransomware is a lot about encryption, locking down. In most cases, it's about extorting the user. So straight away, you've already have this framework, this understanding that these are the things that you need to look out for. So you need to start looking about, is there a lot of encryption happening on your device? Do you see any ransomware prompts to extort the user? Do you notice any sluggishness that would have led to a ransomware? And then because of that, you think one more ahead. So how do I prevent that? Right? Also, okay, so you can consider honeypot. So, in terms of honeypot, if you notice that this particular dummy file being encrypted, you know that there's something wrong that's happening, right? Or when in event that you do see logs that indicate ransomware, immediately you know to quarantine this machine. Yeah. So logic puzzles are good, and the ability to adapt and think critically is essential. But always know that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are resources out there. There are frameworks out there, open source frameworks that are free, that has already done the thinking in a sense for you, right? So learn from them, build up your skills from them. Yeah. So this is a run through of all the Q&A in Reddit. And if you really enjoyed this, just let me know. I think I can do this again. I thought it was quite fun. We're running through what some of the problems people are facing when it comes to cybersecurity, and I hope I can actually do this again. So if you do like it, drop a like and subscribe. And until the next video, bye.